Welcome, friends,
to the How-To Heretic.
I'm Uncle Mark.
I'm Uncle Dan.
And I'm Uncle Doug.
And this is your user's guide to life on the outside.
That's right. Leaving religion is the first step into a larger, better world.
But it can also be a scary world. Things work differently now.
Never fear. That's why we're here.
We're your audio uncles. And with help from good friends and experts in all sorts of fields,
we're going to share the stories and seek the knowledge to build a great life.
After all, you only get one that we know of, so you'd better make the most of it. Rawhide.
brother uncles.
Hey,
is that like sister wives?
It is exactly like that, but gay.
Oh, okay.
And so too late. It's already happened. Just deal with it. So here we are. It's episode 99.
99.
Boom, baby.
99. A good round number, I think.
Our last foray into the double digits.
Yeah.
That's it, guys. Let's. We've got a big step up after this.
It's really happening.
I am going to talk about Russia's greatest love machine.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, so be ready for that. Warning to the youngsters, it gets pretty not sexy.
And I'm going to talk about something that doesn't matter at all.
Oh, and you're so happy about it.
I am happy about it, yeah.
For once.
Nobody dies.
And I'm going to celebrate me, or somebody with the same name.
Someone who is named after you, obviously.
Obviously.
And it's a great show. This week, of course, we're sponsored by Western Family Canola Oil. If you need canola oil, this meets the basic legal definition. Western Family Canola Oils, technically, yes. So thank you for that support, and, of course, to all our patrons who actually support the show.
Yeah.
And let's jump in and make merry or whatever it is we're going to do.
Let's make history is what we should make.
Yeah.
Uncle Doug.
Duh.
You know, I think that's a good response. We will now do the rest of the show in Russian.
In Russian.
It's now a Russian show.
I, for one, would like to welcome our Russian overlords.
Yeah, exactly. We soon will be living in Russia West or East, depending on which direction you go.
Good thing I like beets.
Yeah, exactly. And to hail our new commanders, I hear, Uncle Mark, you've prepared a borscht of a different flavor.
I definitely have a strange, red, frightening soup to serve. and yeah, it's interesting. You know, guys, I got thinking about the subject of today's segment when I was enjoying the new Hellboy movie the other night.
Oh.
Yeah. Now, I might be the only one in the world, but I love the first two Hellboy movies, right?
They're fantastic. I love them.
They're super fantastic. So I don't know if you guys have seen this one, but, it lacks the panache that Del Toro and Ron Perlman brought to the first two. There's the level of detail is a little lacking, and even though everybody loves David Harbour, who plays the sheriff on Stranger Things, who plays Hellboy in this one, I don't know. He just didn't have that Ron Perlman gravitas. So any damn way. Embedded in the Hellboy universe is a fictionalized version of a very real person whose life and death are so legendary and weird that if only half of it is true, he could sell the shit out of Dos Equis if he were still alive today. And he is an excellent cautionary tale of the dangers of crazy spiritual people getting too close to the levers of power, as we shall discuss. And that real-life person, played so wonderfully by Carol Roden in the first original Hellboy movie, is Grigori Yefimovich Rasputin, more well-known, like Cher or Madonna, simply as Rasputin.
Are you even allowed to say his name?
I think you have to throw vodka over your left shoulder and
that's right,
and don't look Baba Yaga in the eye. So this larger-than-life and actually rather large person was born in 1869 in a very remote corner of western Siberia in what was then Imperial Russia. He was the son of peasants and the only one of their 9 children to survive into adulthood.
Oh,
so
my God.
Life was pretty sweet for people in Siberia, obviously.
I like that you said a remote region of Western Siberia as though there's a non-remote region.
Well, there's a couple crossroads out there somewhere.
I mean, when you were born and raised in the place that your country sends criminals,
Right.
Yes.
maybe some of your siblings aren't going to make it.
So, yeah, exactly right. And other than being an only child by rather horrible circumstances, little is known about him until he got married at age 18, and he and his wife Praskovia themselves had 7 children, a whopping 3 of which survived into adulthood.
Oh,
One
those are
of
great
which,
odds.
his daughter immigrated to the United States and eventually worked as a lion tamer before her death in 1977.
Oh, my
because
God.
obviously, right? This story is so crazy. But he later pretty much just abandoned the family as he wandered around searching for some meaning in his life. That wandering began a decade later when he may or may not have had a vision of the Virgin Mary or Saint Simeon of Verkhoturye instructing him to go on a religious pilgrimage. He did so, and there he spent several months in a monastery under the tutelage of some guy who it is believed taught the illiterate 28-year-old to read and write. And in addition to the gift of literacy, he left a changed man. He decided to become a vegetarian, and for a brief time swore off booze, an oath that was not going to last very long, as we will examine. So,
Although I do want to say that everything that you're about to tell us, everything that follows from here on out, just I see as a cautionary tale against vegetarianism. That's I'm just throwing that out.
Or sobriety.
right,
And both.
Yes. Well, sobriety was not a problem he suffered from. So he then spent years basically wandering around as an itinerant holy man, or a stranic, as the Russians call it. It's thought that he visited Greece and some other Eastern Orthodox holy places in his years of wandering. And it's also thought, though there seems to be a lot of disagreement about it, that he was secretly a Klist, or had dabbled with this bizarre Siberian cult. We talked about them way back in episode 29, but they were basically they were a freaky bunch who believed that sexual sin could be exorcised from your soul by huge marathon group sex sessions and then chopping off your genitals.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna fuck the sex right out of you.
Which
That
you
was
had
it.
me until that genitals chopping bit. Frankly.
Okay, can we go back, just rewind a little bit? So, funny how that
just
didn't catch on more than it did, right, fellas?
Right. It's weird.
So, as he is well known to have put his genitals to frequent use later in life, it seems unlikely he was a member of the Klisti in good standing. But it
Right.
does seem he was developing a sort of freestyle form of Russian Christian orthodoxy, kind of a Siberian Father Grandier, for any French Inquisition buffs out there. But basically, he was working some sex into his version of church rituals, as well as claims of faith healing and magic. And as the child mortality stats in Siberia at the time clearly demonstrate, faith healing was pretty much the only medicine on offer, so you can hardly blame people for wanting some of that. So through a series of chance meetings with other more well-placed religious mystics, he started moving up the ranks of the legit Russian Orthodox Church, even though rumors of his unorthodox behaviors followed him. And it's important to remember that Russian society has always had a pretty superstitious bent, and in the late 19th century, it was skyrocketing. The interest, and it was the same thing all over the world. Interest in spiritualism, mediums, faith healing was actually at a fever pitch. So, if you were a mysterious, very intense mystic from the hinterlands, surrounded by rumors of healing and magic, it was a seller's market. So, long story short, Rasputin ends up in St. Petersburg, surrounded by an aura of mystical power. This earned him entry to the bored, bloated ruling class looking for the latest in parlor tricks and contacting the dead, etc. And despite his rather alarming appearance, if you've seen this guy...
Yeah, he's not a good-looking man.
No, he looked like he was about 4 stops back in those charts of human evolution, and that he hadn't left his cave to have a bath in a couple decades. His look can best be described as matted. So,
Yeah, I think if you were even in New York, if you were on a subway car and he got on, you'd probably get off.
You'd get off, yeah, and you'd be wise to do it. So he was soon getting introduced around as the latest 1%er must-have Mad Monk accessory of the season. So this fatefully got him an introduction to the big boss, Tsar Nicholas, and his wife Alexandra in October of 1906. Their young son Alexei was a hemophiliac, meaning that his blood would not properly clot, making him extremely vulnerable to bleeding to death from even minor incidents. And the royal family was told that the backcountry weirdo might be able to help, and it turns out he was. On a couple of early occasions, the presence of Rasputin actually made the bleeding stop. He was instantly pulled into the inner circle of the royal family as an indispensable miracle worker, having saved the young life of the heir to the Russian throne. So how about that?
So he would walk into the room and the young kid would stop bleeding.
Let me explain. Like so many miracles we've talked about on the show, it seems there was a logical explanation. Rasputin was many things, and one of them was this kind of ad hoc naturopath. So he insisted, rather than a very studied and licensed one.
Right.
So
right. Those ones that do so well.
Right. So he insisted that the primitive medicines that they had at the time that were being administered to the boy be stopped at once, including one made from the abundant birch bark of Siberian forests, aspirin.
Right.
Now, he didn't know it because nobody really did, that aspirin is a very effective blood thinner, and something a hemophiliac should absolutely not be taking, right? So no aspirin, less bleeding, there's your miracle. But
Ta-da!
But let's put this guy in charge of Russia. But that knowledge was years in the future, so in 1906 it was a fucking miracle, and Alexandra would have refused to be convinced otherwise. So now, Tsar Nicholas and his wife had no idea that young Alexei would never sit on the throne, and that Nicholas himself would be the last of the czars. They also couldn't have known that their strange out-of-town house guest would have a significant role to play in the upcoming series of very unfortunate events. This is why I never let anybody from the countryside stay in my house. I intend to retain my throne. Thank you very much. Sorry, Keith, it's the holiday Inn for you again. So it wasn't long before Rasputin, now basically a family member, got around to acting like one. The palace life suited him, and so did the oceans of booze that came with it. His oath did not hold. As did the easy access to the female side of the not-long-for-this-world aristocracy. So the boozy monk pretty much fucked his way through high society, and in a highly uptight Orthodox Christian country like Russia, these rumors were deeply scandalous. The Romanovs were very unpopular among much of the ruling elite and hated by the impoverished masses of Russian society. The Rasputin scandals were definitely not helping, but the family refused to hear it. He was a miracle worker, even if he was a sloppy drunk one that couldn't keep it in his unwashed pants. So at the outbreak of World War I, Russia, like every other current and former country in Europe, dashed gallantly into the breach of chivalric insanity. And for anyone not familiar with World War I, it was for real one of the most fucking insane periods in history. And if you haven't listened to Dan Carlin's huge examination of it on this Hardcore History podcast, it's a great primer on the war that broke the world. I highly recommend it. So
yeah, if you ever have an extra 27
46 hours. Yeah, it's so fucking long. So anyway, Rasputin had advised against Russian involvement in World War I, but Nicholas could not resist the thought of the political boost being a wartime czar would give him. So Rasputin advised him the only way they would be victorious is if God's chosen monarch, the czar himself, were to lead the troops on the battlefront. And the czar took his advice and toddled off to the meat grinder with a jaunty new hat. So Alexander and Rasputin essentially were left in charge of a nation on the brink of crisis. Rasputin was at this point taking bribes from the lower aristocracy in exchange for influence and was having Alexander appoint his followers to government positions. Again, this guy has no training, no education really of any kind.
What do you mean? That one guy taught him how to read.
That's true. A basic
that's education.
First grade level. So the war was going very badly for Russia, as it was pretty much for everybody else. And the Tsar, while looking great in his fancy uniform, was hopelessly incompetent as a military man. Public outrage was intense, and the peasants were growing very restless. This was not helped by the rumor that the Mad Monk was involved in sexual congress with the Empress herself, which is still a hotly disputed topic by historians, most of them leaning toward no, but it didn't matter to the credulous masses. It was all too much for some of the governing class. Rasputin had already survived an assassination attempt in his village, which was another miraculous event that added to his mystique. But the one being hatched by several opposition aristocrats was meant to be successful. So, Prince Felix Yusupov invited the lout to a party at his palace on the early morning of December 30th, 1916. and arrangements had been made by several co-conspirators to get the job done quickly and quietly. So Rasputin was invited downstairs for a little VIP treatment, which he had become very accustomed to. Upstairs, a Victrola played Yankee Doodle Dandy again and again because the nightmarish events of this particular evening needed an appropriately bonkers soundtrack. So it's true. Rasputin was offered several glasses of wine and pastries so loaded with cyanide, the conspirators were afraid to even touch them. Rasputin wolfed them down and guzzled the wine to no effect. Stunned, the prince ran back upstairs where the other co-conspirators were hiding and were like, what the fuck do we do? And one of them gave him a gun, which he took downstairs and shot the still standing Rasputin point blank in the chest. Then they took off to find something to wrap him up in so they could dispose the body and get a car. And when they went back downstairs, Rasputin leapt up and attacked Yusupov, who for obvious reasons freaked the fuck out. And somehow he got out of the basement and into the courtyard where he tried to climb the gate, and they shot him at least twice more. Once in the head, when I think this is surely the origin of the double tap, right? Do not take any chances with the undead. So
how do you say Wolverine in Russian?
Exactly. So they wrapped him in a sheet and dumped him through a hole in the ice in the Neva River. And the police found him there a few days later because he was missing. There was gunfire in the night. They didn't know what was going on. And the Tsar and the Empress were furious and inconsolable. Sadly, their anger was to be short-lived because in October of the following year, the Tsar and his family were invited to leave the palace by a swarm of angry Bolsheviks, furious about a vast assortment of abuses and excesses, Rasputin being one of them. And sadly, when they were all shot to death and dismembered in their basement prison, not even Rasputin could have staunched poor young Alexei's bleeding. So, like the sainted King and Queen of America, Ron and Nancy Reagan, and their court astrologer who sought the wisdom of the constellations for when to schedule fucking nuclear arms negotiations, I think bringing soothsayers and healers and religious lunatics into the cockpit of government makes a safe landing far less likely. The separation of church and state, people. Learn it, live it, love it. So...
Yeah. It didn't do so well for Julius Caesar either. So
no,
there you go.
And there's history is replete with this cautionary tale. So Rasputin was buried in a little churchyard belonging to the royal family, but after the revolution, his body was dug up by the Bolsheviks and burned, lest it become a shrine. So you can't just go, pour some vodka out on it. Sorry, guys. And because this whole sordid mess isn't strange enough,
rather, that's what they tell you they did with the body. They reanimated it, and he's walking the earth today as Tom Hardy in all of those movies.
Oh, I thought that the Clintons killed him. Anyway, because this whole sordid mess isn't strange enough, let's end with the lyrics from Eurodisco band Boney M's 1978 hit disco single, Rasputin. This is a real thing. I'll put it in the show notes. It is so fucking crazy. There lived a man in Russia long ago. He was big and strong, his eyes a flaming glow. Most people looked at him with terror and with fear, but to Moscow chicks, he was such a lovely dear. He could preach the Bible like a preacher full of ecstasy and fire, but he also was the kind of teacher women would desire. And then the chorus, rah, rah, Rasputin, lover of the Russian queen. There was a cat that was really gone. Rah, rah, Rasputin, Russia's greatest love machine. It was a shame how he carried on. And the song finally ends simply, oh, those Russians.
I think if you set those lyrics to the tune of Yankee Doodle Dandy, the world would come to an end.
So that's the story of Russia's greatest love machine, everybody.
Wow.
Yeah. So do with that what you will, because I don't know what to do with it.
Oh, that Rasputin.
Oh, those Russians.
Thank you for that, and I guess we'll just move on.
Let's get out of
До
here.
свидания. Oh, Uncle Dan.
Yeah.
I like a good meal.
Yeah.
And I sometimes I may overindulge. I might have too much to eat. But
sure.
there's a certain meal that's famous for leaving you a little unsatisfied just a couple hours later. You know what I'm talking about?
Well, I do, but
Kale salad.
That leaves me unsatisfied in the moment of. So.
Indeed, it does.
I think I can speak to this.
Yeah?
Well, as I considered what I would spend my time on this week, I won't lie. I was having a bit of a tough time wrestling away the darkness that's going on in the world these days. So
I don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly. I had a bit to drink, and I ordered up some Chinese food because there's nothing that will make you feel better the next day than a hangover combined with indigestion. And what a world in peril really needs is high-sodium slop, probably prepared by an underpaid immigrant, served in planet-killing polystyrene boxes, all wrapped up in low-density, non-recyclable polyethylene bag.
Okay, we're getting you a prescription for something. You need something. We'll get you a
Well, as
I don't know.
I sat there contemplating just how much I am not helping. The subject for today was literally staring me in the face. No matter where in this great nation you order your Chinese food, whether it's a bargain basement Chinese buffet in a strip mall near you, or lousy Schwan in Chicago, your meal will always end with the cracking open of a small cookie in the hopes that the little slip of paper inside might contain a secret for your success, or at least the winning lotto numbers. That's right. Today I want to talk about fortune cookies.
Woo-hoo. Yes.
So fortune cookies are one of those very strange but ubiquitous pieces of woo, like the Daily Horoscope or Zen Office Fountains or Marianne Williamson. Nobody knows where they come from. They seem basically harmless, but their absence would be noticed. The modern iteration consists of a nearly ephemeral confection containing a slip of paper with a vague message or prophecy, a Chinese phrase with translation, and a list of supposedly lucky numbers, individually wrapped in even more of the aforementioned shitty plastic.
Yeah.
So their origins are not 100% known, but one thing is for sure, they are not Chinese. Most likely they are an Americanized version of a similar cookie that from Japan that was first made by immigrants on the West Coast in the 20th century. And
the West Coast of the U.S.
Yes, pardon me, the West Coast of the U.S. And then for reasons we'll discuss, they made an unlikely cultural transition to end up being associated with Chinese food, but definitely not Chinese food in China.
Right.
These are not served in China.
So please don't be that tourist that goes to China and then asks for them everywhere you go.
Exactly.
And just, why don't they serve those here?
How do Chinese people know their fortunes then? When they go out and get what they probably just call food.
Right. Exactly.
That would be that's a subject for another episode.
I guess I could have not said Chinese food in China and just said food in China.
Yes.
So there are three main claimants to the origins of the cookie. I'm going to murder these. Mukatu Hagiwara claims to have invented them in the late 1890s or early 1900s in San Francisco, while David Jung claims he invented the cookie in Los Angeles in 1918, and Saiichi Kito claims to have invented them sometime between 1903 and 1920. While it seems unimportant to us who first came up with the idea for a basically disposable foodstuff, the organizations these three men founded, Golden Gate Park's Japanese Tea Garden, the Hong Kong Noodle Company, and Fugetsu Do, respectively, are still around today, as is the rivalry.
Wow.
Really?
Unfortunately, yeah. If you're expecting the rivalry to manifest itself like the opening scene from Big Trouble in Little China, I'm afraid you're going to be disappointed.
Damn it.
With the invention of automation and the inability to copyright food, sorry, Cincinnati, the production of modern fortune cookies has moved to several massive manufacturers.
You don't have to copyright it if it's so bad nobody else wants to copy it.
I think you guys need to explain what that's about. You can't just leave that hanging there.
Did we ever talk about this on air?
I don't know. I don't think so. About the
we
spaghetti with
did.
chili on it?
All right, Cincinnati listeners, we're going to take a giant steaming shit on your town right now. But when we were in Cincinnati for the Atheist Convention, 4 months ago?
Yeah.
Whatever.
Back in May or whatever.
When we asked people what we should do while we're in town, universally they said, what's it called?
Well, there are two competing restaurants chains.
Yeah.
There's Lone Star and there's
Cityscape or something like
the
that.
other one.
Yeah.
Oh my God, we're going to get so many fucking emails about this.
And, like New York has pizza, San Francisco has I don't know what. Cincinnati has very badly cooked spaghetti with pretty bland chili and mild cheddar cheese all over it.
And mounds of shredded cheddar cheese.
Yeah. And that's their thing.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, Cincinnati, it's fucking dreadful.
Here's what's funny, and I mentioned this to you a while back. It's not good. However, I found myself craving it for about a week afterwards. I don't know why. I had to actually get spaghetti at a restaurant that I would never have bought spaghetti just because I needed to I don't know why. The craving just kept coming.
Look, if I was cross-eyed drunk at 3 a.m. and I managed to produce that dish, I would be very proud of myself. As a town, Cincinnati, you should not be proud. All right. Back to the story.
But by the way, if you ask anyone in Cincinnati, they will have very strong feelings about which shitty chili spaghetti is.
We love
the
you,
good,
Cincinnati.
The good one.
It was a great city. It was a great city to hang
wrong.
out in, but that shit is just unforgivable.
I mean, maybe we went to the wrong one. We only went to the one.
That's true.
Anyway, what the fuck were we talking about?
Road trip.
Sorry.
All right.
Yes.
Back to the fortune cookies. The biggest production house of fortune cookies is Wonton Food Incorporated, not Wonton, in Brooklyn,
It might be wanton.
which produces roughly half of the 3 billion fortune cookies made every year.
Wow.
They pump out 4.5 million fortune cookies a day.
Wait, a day?
A day.
Wow.
4.5 million.
Wow.
Most manufacturers,
Somebody's got to
including-
type up all those little pieces of paper. That's
We'll
crazy.
talk about it, exactly. Most manufacturers, including Wonton, will produce customized fortune cookies with whatever message you want for approximately 40 cents per cookie for an order of 100 or 15 cents per cookie for an order of 10,000 or more. Patreon goal.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
Now, around 1940, the Japanese market for these cookies took a bit of a nosedive when 100,000 or so would-be customers were shipped off to concentration camps in the Southwest in what would be the last time that would ever happen in American history.
Ouch. Remember how you said that you were going to avoid all of the heavy stuff that's happening?
I never said that.
Oh, okay.
I said I tried.
God damn it.
This is the best he can do. This is it.
As happy as I'm going to get. So it was Americans who spent the last 100 years torturing the Chinese to build the railroads tossed them a literal and figurative cookie while they were distracted imprisoning the Japanese. It's a tale as old as time. So the recipes do not vary very much. They're all basically made of flour, sugar, vanilla, and sesame oil. They are of essentially negative nutritional value. They have like 20 calories, 6 grams of carbohydrates, and about 3 grams of sugar each.
Why are you trying to shit on everybody's happy experience?
So they're basically the food version of Lil Nas X's Old Town Road with Billy Ray Cyrus. There's a lot of confusing cultural appropriation going on. There's not a lot of substance. Everybody loves it, but nobody's sure why. And it can really only happen in America. So let's talk about the fortune part of the fortune cookie. The original version of this cookie was and still is made in parts of Japan, complete with a random fortune called an omikuji. However, these cookies moved into mass production in America. Writers were and are employed to write a sufficient number of random, non-threatening, and vaguely Confucius-y sounding thoughts.
Can I just say it has been a lifelong dream of mine to be a fortune cookie writer?
Really?
I wouldn't be. They wouldn't hire me because I would want to do like wildly specific and absolute mind-blowingly
menacing,
like on the nose.
Yeah.
For things like move to Texas or whatever. Just like anything that's like
Look to your left.
right. Exactly.
Well, for 15 cents a cookie, we can make that dream come true.
No, I want it to be something that's distributed to people at the restaurants or whatever.
Dan wants to try to put that tiny piece of paper in the little typewriter roller thing and get it to line right up. It's tough. It's tough to do 4 million of those a day.
It takes skill. It does.
I would
So-
write things like "Don't buy green bananas." Just leave it at that.
Well, it's not a bad career to aspire to because a good fortune cookie writer can pull down 6 figures.
Really?
Donald Lau, for example, had been the chief fortune writer for Wonton Foods for the past 30 years until he decided to retire in early 2017. Any guesses why he retired?
He ran out of magic?
Writer's block. So, like any virtuoso whose work spans decades, Lau's work has gone through some different periods. In the early 2000s, for
You're
instance...
making this up.
No,
I
I'm
really
not.
like his blue period.
Exactly. He chose to break from the otherwise inspirational direction his work had taken and went a bit dark, writing fortunes such as, quote, "Perhaps you've been focusing too much on yourself. There may be a crisis looming. Be ready for it.
Oh my God!
Your problem just got bigger. Think, what have you done?" And of course, it's over your head now. Time to get professional help.
Wow.
Wow. First of all, the other complaint that I hear a lot about fortune cookies is that they're never fortunes.
Yeah. And
they're always platitudes.
right. And there's reasons for that, because if you actually predict something and you could be potentially held liable for someone doing something wrong.
Yeah.
So
we've talked about the specificity of prophecy being a real problem for prophets on this show.
Yeah.
So I think the fortune cookie writers have avoided that pitfall.
Well, I mean, just think about it, though. If any of us actually bothered to read the fortune in our fortune cookie, if it did contain a message that was both dark and specific, it would freak you out. I mean, it would give us pause, right?
Yeah.
Which is kind of the weird credence we give these little slips of paper. And I'll venture to guess that I'm not the only one that feels a slight sense of disappointment when I'm confronted with just a generic aphorism rather than, say, the time and date of my death.
Yeah.
Right.
So
I will say this. Who was it? A friend of a friend actually got a fortune and kept it in his wallet her purse for forever. And she showed it to me. And it was a fortune that said, "He loves you as much as he can, but that's not very much."
ooh,
Wow.
I was like,
ouch.
damn, that is world-shaking crazy right there. That was my favorite one.
Can I make an admission to you? I have, and I just pulled it out. I have a fortune in my wallet that I have had there for more than 30 years.
What?
Yep.
Wow.
And I'm holding it right now. And I got this at dinner the night before I went on to become a double state champion in my chosen sport.
Okay.
Yeah.
And here's what it says. You have an unusual equipment for success. Be sure to use it properly.
Whoa.
Fortunes are bullshit. Huh? I don't think so.
And that sport was Highlight.
That's right. I was a double state highlight champion in Utah. It's
That's crazy. I never
very
knew that.
competitive.
Wow.
Yeah. There you go.
Well, other than that, I think they're essentially harmless. They're like the daily horoscope. They're basically too nebulous to do any damage. However, as Uncle Mark reminded me the other day, they have led directly to one death. In episode 14 of the Twilight Zone reboot back in 1985,
That's right, baby.
Elliot Gould plays a mean-spirited food critic that pans a new Chinese restaurant. And upon departure, his fortune cookie reads, "You're going to die." He storms out in a huff only to find himself on a never-ending street full of Chinese restaurants and an insatiable hunger that he can't satisfy, no matter how much he eats. The episode ends with him reading another fortune that says, "You're dead," and a shot of his tombstone. Like any of our $10 patrons, his heaven morphed into hell. So
That's...
Yeah.
I'll leave you with the closing words of that episode, and I won't do a Rod Serling impersonation because I can't. Check, please, for Mr. Harry Folger, for whom the phrase dim sum is not merely a description, but a damnation. A man who finds himself sitting down to a single never-ending course of just desserts, prepared for him in the kitchens of the Twilight Zone.
Wow.
So they're not
Nice.
totally harmless.
Nice.
Not if you're in a show, apparently.
This is a cautionary tale about not being Elliot Gould,
Yeah.
right?
Which most of us can avoid if we try hard enough.
If we try hard enough. So
Yeah, I tried very hard to find something today that didn't matter, and I think I succeeded.
Yeah?
Yay! Well,
Well
I love
done.
it, and happy retirement to Mr. Lau. I'm a big fan of his work.
Do any of you have like superstitions about how you had to do it in order for the fortune to come true?
No.
I've
I
had
did.
people.
Yeah, I did.
I've had people tell me like you have to eat the whole cookie,
Oh, yeah.
or you have to eat the cookie before you read it, or
Right.
like there's any number of different variants.
I had
on
to eat.
that.
I had to eat half before and then half after. Was my
Oh, interesting.
thing. Yeah.
I had to eat the whole cookie and the fortune without reading it in order for it to come true.
in the plastic.
Which has some caveats. It's
Yeah.
tricky. I don't know. I can't tell if it actually works, but
And-
I definitely
and
You can't tell that it doesn't.
Continue
In the
to this day.
spring, when we found it out in the backyard, all that was kind of left was the plastic wrapper and the crushed up thing. You know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about?
Yeah.
No dog owners. Okay, great. Let's move on.
Fellas,
Oh.
the love pours in from all over the globe, and we must acknowledge it.
Right.
And it pours in the most important way, which is obviously monetary.
Right.
Yes.
So we have some new patrons to thank. And we'll just jump right into that. Thanks go to Peter, to Harry, and then I think it's my turn. I've got to do a saint for Cadillac Kim.
Cadillac Kim.
Yeah.
Is that Cadillac with a K?
It is, in point of fact.
Right on, Kim.
And Cadillac Kim, your saint that the world, that the universe, that the Lord has appointed unto you is Saint Steve of Camden Town. And Saint Steve is the patron saint of smelly but effective kitchen implements and long boats, and also the patron saint of freezing rain.
Wow,
Yes.
that's quite a resume.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
when you know how he was martyred, it makes complete sense.
It all comes together. We'll have to cover that.
And I often think
that.
to myself, this spatula smells like shit, but man, it's effective.
But you don't want to use another one.
That's right.
When you've got one that's that good in the house, you got to go with
Gotta
it.
roll.
Gotta go with that spatula.
Yeah,
So
and-
that's amazing.
And Uncle Mark, you have
Yeah.
to come up with a saint.
Oh, we have a 2 saint week.
We have a 2 saint week. So, Uncle Mark, congratulations. You get to come up with a saint for Captain Samples.
Captain Samples, of course. Yes, our old friend, Captain Samples. Your patron saint is Saint Rish Fist Lump. And
Are you just naming things you're looking at?
I
we
love
all?
lamp.
Rich Fish Lump of Arimathea, and she, of course, is the patron saint of hovercraft.
Yeah.
Obviously of Tunisia, and also of reruns of the Lawrence Welk Show.
Oh, I remember
excellent.
that now. That's right.
Yeah.
I had forgotten that.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
On that saint whose name we shouldn't repeat because it's too holy, or I can't remember it.
Exactly.
Way to go, Cadillac
yes.
Kim and
Captain Samples.
Captain Samples.
And
Yes.
friends listening at home, here's what you need to understand. We love all of our patrons, but some of them, they stick around for a while and then they bail. So that's fine. They're totally allowed to do that. But
We will find you.
you need to pick up the slack. You, listener, who's not currently a supporter, it's on you now, baby.
Right.
So Mark, tell them what they won. How do they do it?
I don't know what they won, but if you want to win something, you can go to our website, which is howtoheretic.com. You can click on the Support Us tab, and that will take you to Patreon. Put the money in. It comes out on this end as love and possibility and hope and support and just pushes back the pain for one more week that we all experience.
And
So.
I'm pretty sure it ends global warming if you guys give enough.
Well, pushing back the pain for a few more hours is pretty much how I'm living my life right now.
Yes.
So yeah.
So do that for Uncle Doug, and then
Save Uncle Doug.
As we always say, give us as many stars as you can wherever stars can be given. That really helps. Math algorithm. More people listen. You've got more friends. We've got more friends. Everybody gets a fucking Pontiac. Let's move on. Say, Doug,
Hello.
you there?
I'm here.
Hello, Doug.
Come in.
Yeah. I think Dan, I think our Uncle Daniel has written a book he wants to tell us about. and of course, because he's him, he's just called it Daniel, I think.
It's all about him.
I'm not known for my creativity, fellas. I'm just a truth teller. That's all I am.
But the love of self is the most important love of all, Dan.
Because of great.
Okay, quick. Who wrote that song? Who actually wrote that song?
Marion Williamson.
No. Do you know who wrote that?
Scott Joplin.
Whitney Houston sang it, made it famous, but who wrote it?
Henry Kissinger.
Oh, close. Very
Dolly
warm. Kissinger was quite warm. Muhammad Ali wrote that fucking song.
Yeah,
That is a true. That is an actual true.
Well, that's That's good. I've got the greatest love of all inside of me.
Yeah.
And today, in celebration of the birthday of everybody's favorite uncle, which is coming up this week,
That's right.
we are going to be discussing the book of my namesake. Not the book of Mark, no. And there's obviously not a book of Doug. So that means yes. Daniel. We're going to go with the book of Daniel in the Bible.
Hooray!
I think- And the show's canceled. It's just like I feel like whenever that air horn sound happens, that thing has to be canceled.
Well, that was actually
thing is.
Doug's impersonation of the adults from Charlie Brown doing an air horn.
The adults from Charlie Brown on crank.
Yeah. Anyway, what are we
Okay.
talking about?
Hey, okay, so the book of Daniel. It
Talking
is
about
toward.
a weird king stealing a bunch of Jewish boys.
Why? Well, we'll get to it.
Yeah.
This is a book towards the end of the Old Testament.
Yeah.
And theoretically takes place sometime around 600 BCE. And yes, we open in chapter 1 on the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar. I'm pretty sure I nailed that. And he is like the first thing, he's just wrecking the king of Judah, whose name is Jehoiakim. And he's sacking Jerusalem. So apparently, according to the second verse of the book, God just rolled over and gave Nebuchadnezzar the win. So fuck
Yeah.
you, chosen people.
Yeah. Well, we've discussed God and his chosen people have had a very complicated relationship.
For sure.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, here it is. This is verse 2 of chapter 1 of Daniel. And the Lord delivered Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, along with some of the articles of the temple of God. These he carried off to the temple of God in Babylonia and put in the treasure house of his God. So God was just basically asleep at the wheel and just gave him the win.
Yeah.
and then let him take like holy relics from the temple of him to go and just use it to worship his own God.
But he kind of makes it sound like he did it. Like it
Yeah.
was his accomplishment.
Yeah,
Because God is such a Trump.
yeah, exactly.
Like credit for
He is
everything.
such a Trump.
Every
yeah.
loss has to be a win.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
so true. God, you just hurt my brain. God is Trump. The God
Yep.
especially the God of the Old Testament is
Yeah.
definitely who Donald Trump is.
Yeah.
100%.
Right.
And Trump believes that that's the case. Anyway, Nebuchadnezzar wasn't an idiot. He knew that those crafty Jews had some very smart cookies among them, and he ordered that some of them be brought back to his palace or to his land to serve him. He was a little specific about who could come, though. He said,
Yes.
quote, you ready for this?
Yep.
Some of the Israelites from the royal family and the nobility, young men without any physical defect, handsome, showing aptitude for every kind of learning, well-informed, quick to understand, and qualified to serve in the king's palace.
Sounds like a grinder profile.
So, those guys.
No femmes, no fatties is how that
Right,
usually is.
exactly.
Yeah.
Something tells me King Nebi wasn't just looking for wisdom.
Yeah, this is one of those other things that's just a very unexamined thing that's left to hang there in the Bible. Was it 1,000 unblemished Jewish boys, please?
Yeah,
and
so-
let's move on.
Yeah. Although guys like that shouldn't be too hard to find. You ask any Jewish mother, and all of their boys fit that general description. So. Anyway, my Mordecai's a beautiful. Anyway, among those chosen,
Casual racism is the
Eli,
best
help.
racism.
Hey, everybody, just calm down. It's my birthday. I can be as racist as I want to.
One day a year.
Among those chosen were Daniel and his three friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. And if you are wondering why I didn't bother to learn the pronunciations of those names, that's because those are super Jewy names, and the Babylonians didn't want them to be. They wanted them to be all Babyloni. So
because that language is easier to pronounce.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
So they gave them sexy Babylonian names, Daniel became Belteshazzar, and the other three became, and you'll recognize these names maybe, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
Yeah.
That's right.
Weird.
Which
that
are
we
the
know
three ships that Columbus sailed to America on.
The Ocean
Everyone
Blue.
knows this. Yeah.
It's all in the book. Daniel, not unlike his namesake on this podcast, was the wisest and handsomest and most defect-free. But all four of them were 10 times, literally, and it says this in the book, 10 times better at interpreting literature and general smart stuff than any of Nebuchadnezzar's magicians and astrologers and so forth. So, yeah, he kept them around.
Yeah.
Defect-free is a weird term to apply to yourself, you know? I'm defect-free.
Take a gander. You're looking right at me. What do you see? Because I don't see any defects.
Yeah, a lack of defects.
And humility, too. Anyway, a bunch of time later, and by a bunch of time I'm saying enough time that Nebuchadnezzar had totally forgotten about how much better those Hebrew boys were at interpreting things than his own doofuses, but not more than a year, because this happened in the, quote, second year of his reign. So you figure that out.
Huh.
As is so often the case in Scripture, memory doesn't last more than a few seconds. So anyway, King Nebi had a dream, and he was shook.
Yeah.
He called his magicians, his enchanters, his sorcerers, etc. to him and said, interpret this dream because it's totally freaking me out. And they all said, sure, what's the dream? And he said, aha! He was no dummy. He knew that if he just told them the dream, they might try to come up with an interpretation that would trick him somehow or that would just be flattering or whatever. And he wanted to be sure that they weren't just making shit up.
So they had to tell him what the dream was.
So he did a trick. You tell me what the dream was. It is also possible that he just forgot the dream, as per the King James version, where he says, it is gone from me. So,
oh, really?
Maybe he just I mean, I know I wake up a lot, and I'm like, oh, that dream was scary. Oh, what was it?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Right.
I'm thinking that's what happened. Anyway, regardless, he was like, you guys have to tell me what the dream was and the interpretation of it. So, okay, that's great. But as an added motivation, if you can't do it, then Nebuchadnezzar will have everybody cut up into pieces and knock down their houses. So, weirdly, none of the dream interpreters were tremendously interested in this deal.
Yeah.
They were like, basically, no, really, this works a lot better if you tell us what the dream was. And he basically became enraged and ordered, and I shit you not, all of the wise men of Babylon to be killed.
Well, that's a smart thing to do.
Yeah, talk about Trumpian, right?
Right.
Just
Start fresh. You know what? Start fresh.
Uppity smart guys, get them out of here. We're gonna be man of the people here. Anyway, so they send out people to go gather up all of the smartasses and kill them. And they get to apparently they send a guy who he's got a name, but I'm just calling him the Sheriff of Nottingham because I didn't write down what the name was. Anyway, he comes to Daniel and his buddies and he says, "Come on, we're gonna go kill you." And Daniel's like, how come? And the dude explains the whole sitch and says, and Daniel's like, well, I could go and just die, or, and hear me out on this, why don't I take a crack at interpreting that dream? Right. Why don't we just try it out? If I'm going to die anyway, why not?
And he's the only one that figured out that potential catch-22.
Yeah, I guess so. So yeah, they take him to Nebuchadnezzar. In the meantime, he's gone and prayed, and glory be the Lord has told him what the dream is. He goes to Nebuchadnezzar. He tells him his dream, reminds him what it was, and then interprets it for him. And it's a boring, stupid dream about a giant statue, and he's got a gold head, and he's got a silver chest, and blah blah blah.
Yeah, and clay feet.
And clay and steel feet, or iron feet. And clay. And basically he says these are going to be these kingdoms that come after you, and they're less good than you, and then the last one breaks and falls apart. And and there have been many interpretations of what this dream means after the fact.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, when you're at a party, what is the worst thing you hear? Like the worst thing you can hear from somebody that has you cornered is, let me tell you about my dream.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So let's make this the central part of a narrative in a book.
Yeah.
Right.
Indeed. And boy, is it central to this whole thing, because Daniel's whole gig is interpretation of dreams, like and interpretation of other crazy fever dreams or whatever. He's good at that sort of thing.
He was a therapist. I mean, he was a classic Jewish therapist, right?
He was. I would say closer to. I mean, yeah, he's got that sort of Jungian dream interpretation thing, which I mean, symbolism. I think we all know is kind of bullshit, but whatever. Anyway, so the king is pretty impressed by this. He gives Daniel some trinkets and some stuff, and everybody goes on their merry way. Then we get to chapter, what are we on, 3, and Nebuchadnezzar, inspired by his dream, apparently, decides to make a giant statue out of gold. Brilliant. Really, really, he's more Trumpy every day.
I know.
Yep.
He just knows exactly what to do with a dream like that.
Well, I don't want to give away. I don't want to, any spoiler here, but let's hope it ends similarly for these two men. That's all. That's all I'm saying.
We'll see. We'll see.
It's not a threat. It's just a fervent
die
hope.
on the toilet?
Anyway,
he was carving a tweet into a cuneiform clay tablet.
So Nebuchadnezzar sets up a giant golden statue that is enormous and tall, and then commands everybody in his very massive kingdom.
Ants. Oh, kingdom, sure.
That they have to worship this statue. Now, this was partly a trick by his advisors, who were... It's a cute little anti-Semitic trick where they had him say that anyone who doesn't worship this thing, when they hear music, and it's very specific about what music, when they hear the sound of the horn, the pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, or any other kind of music, everybody has to fall down and worship the golden image.
Are those instruments all played at the same time?
It's just, yes,
Jesus.
probably.
It's too bad there wasn't a theremin back then, too. Huh?
Well, if you heard one, you better fucking fall down and worship. Anyway,
just err on the side of worship when you hear someone whistle a tune. Why risk
that's right. Why risk it, except that those Jews, they don't do the idol worship thing.
Well, they kind of do a lot, but I guess this is the one time they decided not to.
Right, yeah, exactly. Apparently, after 45 times of getting it wrong, they learned their lesson. So
Right.
So now they're definitely not going to do it, and suddenly all the advisors are like, hey, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did not bow down. We played a kazoo, and they did not fall down and worship, so get them! So the king has the three of them brought in, and is like, hey, I'm going to now play a hornpipe, and you need to fall down and worship the thing. To which they say, nah, I'm not going to do that.
Right.
And he's like, well, but I've commanded it, and the punishment for not doing that would be to be thrown into a fiery furnace, which is unpleasant. And they all are like, yeah, but we've got a God who's awesome and will save us. And then they add the doubter's addendum, which is, and even if he doesn't, we still won't do it, and we still believe in him. So there. This enrages the king. So the king decides, he says, turn the oven up to 11, 7 times hotter than we normally do, and we're going to throw you guys in.
Yeah.
They bind the guys up. He has his strongest servants bind these 3 guys and take them to throw them into the furnace. And the guards who are going to throw them in, it's so hot that they die. But somehow the 3 guys,
The guards throwing them in die.
fall in anyway.
Yeah.
That is an unsafe work environment.
It is
Did those
indeed.
weird little paper chef hats things that they put on their feet burn off too, or did those remain to kind of dress it up at the end and make it look like a fancy restaurant?
And if this was my faith, I don't know if I'd really be happy about the part of the book where God actually prevented Jews from being thrown into a furnace. Not meant to be funny. That's really fucked up.
Well,
That is really fucked up. Well, he didn't prevent them. He allowed them to be thrown.
God allowed it.
Yeah, he saved them from the fire.
So they go into so they're in the fire, and then Nebuchadnezzar looks. And they cover the whole the furnace with a rock, and then they,
as you do,
and the king, to make it official, sealed it with his ring, with his signet ring. That's good. And then somehow, now I don't know how this furnace works. I have a lot of ways that I can imagine an ancient Babylonian furnace. None of them that are burning hot enough to kill you if you go near it provide you with a way of looking inside, in my brain.
Typically not, yeah.
However, Nebuchadnezzar uses his X-ray vision, looks into the furnace, and goes, holy shit, now there's 4 guys in there, and they're just meandering around.
They're just hanging.
They're just walking around doing nothing.
Yeah.
So he yells at them and says, hey, you guys, come on out of there, which they do, apparently. And they are not burned, not a hair on their head, not any of their garments. Their little booties, the things on their shoes are fine. Everything's golden.
Yeah.
And now there's just the 3 of them again. And, of course, King Nebuchadnezzar realizes, holy shit, that means that you guys were saved by angels and that your God is, in fact, the best God. And they all become Jewish. Just kidding, they don't all become Jewish. He just acknowledges that their God wins and sends them on their merry way, essentially. He's very impressed by that.
That is basically every narrative in the Bible is just people failing to learn the most important lesson from something that happened, right?
That's it.
Again and again and again.
Remember a while back, a couple episodes back, we talked about what would it take to convince me to believe.
Yeah.
This is one of the things that would definitely give me pause.
Yeah.
3 guys going in and coming out not even smelling of smoke.
Yeah.
Well,
and they
wait until you see David Blaine, Doug, because I think you are going to be impressed.
Our super fan Chris Angel could pull it off in a heartbeat. No problem.
Yeah, totally.
The souffle that he walks in carrying will come out perfectly cooked. So anyway, that happened, and what we're leading up to is some more interpretations of dreams.
Yay!
And some other stuff. However, because it is my book, and because there are some other really fun things in this book, I am going to cut this off, and we're going to do a segment 2. I'm going to cliffhanger this bad boy, and we'll do more Daniel in a couple weeks.
So stay tuned for part 2, Daniel Book 2, Electric Boogaloo.
That's right.
That's right. I can't wait for the exciting conclusion.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear about more people's dreams.
It's the adventures of Belteshazzar.
That's right.
Who doesn't want to hear that?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and the writing is on the wall for part 2.
Ooh, real good.
Little
That's real
tease
good.
there, huh?
I'm going to send you some clay shoes for that.
Little tease. All right, well, we'll look forward to part 2, and we'll move on.
Well, friends, that is it for this week's show.
Hey, we'd love to hear from you. If you have ever been thrown into a fiery furnace, send us an email, howto@howtoheretic.com.
Or if you are a hemophiliac looking for a bullshit cure, give us a call about it at 903-88-HOW-TO, which is 903-884-6986. You can also ask me about it on Twitter at howtoheretic.
And thanks to our patrons.
And thanks to Cody Layton for editing the show.
And thank you, friends, for tuning in.
Bye, friends.
Ta-ta!